We are all better off today for having Starjump Grim on the stage. Give him a hand.
Thanks, everyone.
The vision behind Starjump Station, Hangar.link, and Fleet Viewer. Grim, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You've been deeply involved in the creating of tools that enrich the Star Citizen experience for all of us, from Starjump Station to Fleet Viewer. All of those things I use all the time. Can you tell us a little bit about how that journey began?
Yeah, well, I work in the film and television industry. I work in visual effects, and so one of the first things I started doing with Star Citizen was making my own animations, which meant that I had to have ship models to do that. So once I started creating those, the idea was, well, why don't I just put those into an application that you all can access and make your own images and stuff, and that was kind of like the genesis of Fleet Viewer. And then I just surround myself with people smarter than me, like Starlet, who really created HangarLink, and we just bring all of our ideas together.
Fleet Viewer in particular has been a game changer for Star Citizen players. Not only that, but Fleet Viewer is one of those things that creates conversation online. You know, people will post their fleet no matter what size it is.
Yeah.
And seek feedback, have conversations, talk about their theory of the game. It is so generative. How did Fleet Viewer come to life?
Through a lot of trial and error. It was the biggest part of Fleet Viewer was building all the ships. And I have a presentation here that'll walk through how those ships get into Fleet Viewer. It is kind of complicated, especially with concept ships. But ultimately, it was just about finding people who had skill sets that were needed for this overall experience. And again, it ties into HangarLink, so there's like a synergy between those two applications. So yeah, it's like I said, the presentation I'll do next will show how a ship journeys from a holo model on the RSI website all the way into Fleet Viewer. And I'll try to talk through it on time. It has no audio, so I'm going to talk over it, and I hopefully I can sync it up pretty good.
Yep. He's just teasing us with those.
That's our promo. And then, yeah, we could play the next video. And the next video, I'll walk you through the entire pipeline, which I'll go ahead and say, too, that Fleet Viewer has kind of an ethos to it, which is it's supposed to be lightweight. There are other Fleet Viewers out there, and some of you who have really big fleets will know that they struggle sometimes. So with Fleet Viewer, the goal was performance. There's two types of assets. There's concept ships and flight-ready ships. They have completely different pipelines. The reason is flight-ready ships have existing models, concept ships do not. So with concept ships, which is my domain, it starts with the holo model. This is the same holo model you see on the RSI website. It contains no textures, no lighting. It's a low-fidelity mesh. But the reason we start from there is it does keep us accurate. We don't want to put anything in a Fleet Viewer that's not accurate to what you pledged for. So that's kind of a key thing that the holo model does for us, is just kind of keep us accurate to the ship. The next thing is modeling. If you've ever looked at the holo models, sometimes they are lacking detail, so we have to refine that, put Greeble in, put new mesh in. We have to model new assets. So with the Endeavor, for example, none of the modules were modeled, so we have to model those from scratch. That's kind of a process. Some ships are in better shape than others. The older a ship concept, generally the worse its holo model is. The Crucible, Endeavor, and Polaris are probably the worst. After that, we move into texturing. And since the holo models have no texture data, we have to use reference imagery from like the pledge sales. And the key thing with texturing, though, is we need to make sure that the textures are consistent across the entire web, through all 200 ships on Fleet Viewer. So that is a challenge as well. So we pull from an existing texture library to do that. Next is lighting. Lighting is another thing that we have to be site-wide consistent. So if you have 300 ships on your canvas for your fleet, the lighting needs to all be from the same direction. Otherwise, it does look kind of crazy. And you can see there, it's 340 degrees, rotation angle, 20 degrees high. That's how the lighting has to be. Across my pipeline and VMXEO, who's another artist on Fleet Viewer, he has to do that for his pipeline as well. Next is the render and conform stage. So that's where we'll render all 4 angles of the ships at 4K resolution and composite all the passes. You can see the passes there, specular, ambient occlusion, diffuse, full color, all that stuff. That gives us our final image. And then we export those as PNGs with transparency, which is how you all use them on the site. Those are packaged up, and they have to be packaged up in a very specific way with a very specific naming convention, because when those files are pumped into the Fleet Viewer database, the naming conventions has to be right, or the ship won't populate on the canvas for you. So that's pretty key, and Starlet handles it from there. So that's my pipeline. Next are flight-ready ships. This is VMXEO's pipeline, and he uses a program that he developed with 2 other people called StarFab. StarFab is able to pull assets from StarEngine and reassemble them as a blueprint file to be opened in Blender. It is a complicated process because the assets are spread throughout a ship may reference multiple textures from multiple sources. So it pulls that together into essentially a blueprint file. Next, we take that blueprint file and we have to open it in Blender. And when we do that conversion, it's bringing over things like obviously the geometry, but also materials, link dependency assets, and all that kind of stuff. Because there's sometimes, when we're first attempting to pull a ship via StarFab, the ship may come over, but none of the turrets or none of the doors. And that's because we have to find those assets. There may be part of another ship file or something like that, although that is changing based off new stuff we're seeing in the files. Next for flight-ready ships is, again, a modeling and texture kind of fixes pass. They never come over perfect. We always have to go in there and kind of make minor adjustments, do little things. A lot of times that has to do with rigging. So for example, if we pull a ship over like the hull A through StarFab, it'll only come over collapsed. But we'd like to be able to show it in Fleet Viewer as collapsed and expanded. So that's manual work. Next, just like with my concept ship pipeline, it has to go through a lighting pass. And that's where, again, this has to be consistent with my pipeline. So same lighting setup, we share it across Blender and Cinema 4D. And Cinema 4D is what all the concept ships run through. And then all the flight-ready ships are Blender. Next, same thing, render and conform. The flight-ready ships have to do that too. One interesting thing about the render and conform is once we have the image, we have to crop it a very specific way. That's in order for the ships to be scaled correctly in relation to each other on Fleet Viewer. That was and it's not perfect. We have to go in and manually adjust that sometimes. And then flight-ready ships get packaged up for integration, just like concept ships. So during an event like Invictus or IAE, we may have a couple concept ships and a couple flight-ready ships get done for Fleet Viewer. So those are those 2 pipelines right there, and they are very different, although they sort of mirror each other, but they're done in completely different software, packages. Then they have to go into site integration, which is handed over to Starlet. Some of you have probably heard me talk about her on stream before. First thing she does is file organization. That's really key for us. So we have to integrate all the assets into the Fleet Viewer directory. We have to standardize the naming conventions. Again, I told you how important that is. And then bring over all the data. So, the size of the ship, how many meters it is, what the crew capacity is, the SCU, all that. And that gets entered in the database. Image scaling is the next thing. So on Fleet Viewer, you may have noticed we have a low, medium, high resolution. That's actually generated automatically by our backend, but we still have to run it through that process. It's an external piece of software, and that's what gives us our different resolutions. Again, hearkening back to the point of Fleet Viewer, which is performance, right? Next is, we'll get to the stuff that's like over my head, but CDN hashing, essentially this section here, or this phase here, generates the MD5 hashes for each processed image. So this enables us to do aggressive like content delivery caching for Fleet Viewer, which is something we are aiming to get better at, how fast it can update and push things out. Assembly and configuration. Essentially what this is just taking all that hash data and bringing it into our live database, because we have a test version of Fleet Viewer as well, but it gets brought over into the live database and gets like assembled for push to live, essentially. This step here takes those cropped images that I was talking about, where we crop them in a very special way. It takes those cropped images and automatically adjusts them based off cropping to match their in-game meterage, like in terms of length. This took a long time to figure out. It's still not perfect. If you ever find a ship on Fleet Viewer that's the wrong size, it means that process messed up. And then last but not least, Starlet pushes it to live deployment. So we've got it down to where a concept ship, we can take through that entire pipeline in about 2 days, and a flight-ready ship can be done in like 3 hours, pretty much. So, and that's kind of like the entire pipeline there for Fleet Viewer. So, and this, again, plugs directly into Hangar Link, so there's a synergy there across the 2 sites.
Fleet Viewer, outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you talked about Hangar Link,
Yep.
and that provides a structured way for players to track their ships. And what inspired Hangar Link's design?
So Hangar Link originally started as a way to play the CCU game. I'm sure some of you have played that. It's since moved away from that.
How many people play the CCU game?
Yeah, a few out there. Yep.
All right, if you don't know, you better ask somebody.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. All right.
So one thing I'll say about the video playing is that when we do render images, by the way, for Hangar Link and Fleet Viewer, we have to render 4 images per ship. There's over 300 ships. 300 times 4 is like 1,200 rendered assets across the entire site. That does include all the flight-ready ships, all the concept ships, and then like Easter egg ships. So we do ships for charity events that are themed for that, ships for this, ships for friends, ships for people in the community that have passed away. There's like memorial ships in there for them. So there's a lot in our database that we have to kind of manage. So.
I wanted to open up our Q&A on Slido for folks who wanted to ask you questions. And so I now have, and that's available to you all. So if you all have the Slido link and you have questions for Starjump Grim, go ahead and put them in there and we'll get to some of those or versions of some of those at the end. What's been the most rewarding part of working on these projects?
Probably just seeing how many people use it. If you like creating fleet images,
Yes.
You probably like Fleet Viewer. If you do not like them seeing them everywhere, I'm probably the person to blame. But ultimately, it's fun, interacting with the community that way, and then obviously just building up a relationship with the other tools makers. So Urkel and SC Tools and Fleet Yards, Starship 42, the other Fleet Viewer. A lot of people think, we're probably like enemies or something. We're not. We actually share assets and help each other. From time to time, they do stuff a little bit differently than how we do it, but just interacting with everybody and becoming part of the community.
So you talked about relationships with like Urkel. How does that work? Do they use your assets to understand things that they populate in terms of the specifics in there, or vice versa? How does that work?
Well, with Urkel, it's more just like touching base with each other about possibly future collaborations, maybe more on that in a little bit. With other people like Starship 42 or Fleet Yards, we'll share models. I think for Starship 42, I sent over all the Endeavor modules, and then they'll send me something back. It's sort of like a trade. So while it seems like we do the same thing and we're a competing product, so to speak, we help each other all the time.
All right, so we're here with this audience who in part came to see you. Are there any upcoming features or updates that we can hear about today that we might be excited about?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So there's 2 things with Fleet Viewer, and then we have obviously a new thing we're working on, a completely new thing. The 2 things with Fleet Viewer, though, that are being worked on, one of them's being worked on now and one's being sort of concepted. The thing being worked on right now is that we are, for any ship over, I think it's 70 or 80 meters, we're going to bring deck-by-deck cross-sections of those ships for, I think, top-down and profile views. It's not going to be every view because some of the times it doesn't make sense, but pretty much any ship from about 70 meters up will get those. And the thing we're concepting is base building. So when base building comes into the game, we're going to have a system that operates top-down, sort of like Fleet Viewer when you're in top-down mode, but it's going to be based off a snap-to-tile system, and the idea is you and your org are going to be able to collaborate and figure out base layouts before you build anything, is the idea there. Yeah.
I almost want to stand up and clap for that. Let's go.
Some of that just sort of depends on how those assets roll out and bringing those assets in, because it'll be the actual, not the actual 3D model, but renders of the 3D model, much like we treat ships. So it'll just be that top-down view, but you can move it all around, rotate things, all that kind of good stuff. And then in terms of what's being worked on outside of Fleet Viewer, it's our next project. If any of you were at Equinox in Columbus last June, you would have seen a teaser for this as well. But our next project is called Fleet Command. And we do have a teaser video. It's not final UI, but we could play it and I could talk over it. I don't think there's any audio. And I can tell you what the goal of it is. So the idea with Fleet Command is to think Fleet Viewer on steroids. The idea is that you will have a login. Everyone on your org will have a login. You'll be able to log in with certain permissions set for that org control, and that will be set by the org leader. You're going to be able to set flagships for the org. You're going to be able to, and this is all like node-based, how you see it now. And you're going to be able to set up new squadrons. And when someone from your org logs into the org Fleet Command page, they're going to be able to add whatever ships are in their hangar to the org ship roster. They don't have to add all of them. They can just add the ships they want. But when they add those ships to the roster as available or unavailable, whoever's of certain rank within the org is going to be able to assign that ship to certain squadrons. When you have set up all that and all that's built, and again, it's going to be unlimited on how many you have, you're going to be able to deep dive down into the squadron level. You're going to be able to select certain ships. They'll have all the crew positions there. You can have players from your org sign up for that ship and say, hey, I'm gonna be an engineer on this ship or a turret gunner on this ship or whatever. And everybody who logs in will have a profile, right? So your profile will say what org you're in, what squadron you're assigned to. Maybe it's multiple squadrons. What your role in the org is, and then there may be 30 ships in your org that you have a crew position in. Maybe these 3 ships, you're an engineer. These 2 ships, you're a turret gunner. This ship, you're a pilot, all that kind of stuff. There's a second phase to this, though, that will be part of an add-on we're developing that will tie into Discord and essentially be a way to organize to crew up for ships. So if you all are doing a big mission that night, it's going to tie right into Discord. You're going to get alerts. Hey, boarding in progress at Mike L1 on such and such station for such and such ship that you are signed up to be a turret gunner on. And those alerts will come out of game through Discord and hopefully allow people to play together easier and plan their org operations and all that kind of good stuff.
Incredible. Thank you.
Yep.
So many very cool tools and so much work.
Yeah, and it's going to tie in. There's going to be a lot of like DPS calculator stuff in there. Ships are going to get a score based off their role. So if you're an org leader, you're going to be able to see what the overall DPS score for a certain squadron is. So that way you can tell if one squadron is lacking and needs some help or what have you. So there's still a lot of stuff we're figuring out with it, but it's definitely in the testing phases. And this, unlike Fleet Viewer, will eventually be opened up for like a beta test where orgs can sign up. And there's, it can be an org of 2 people, 1 person, or 5,000 people. It really doesn't matter. So.
Powerful. Let's get to some community questions.
Sure. Oh, I will say, so this is the analytics video. I'll say this here.
Okay.
Real quick. So I was kind of, we don't pull our analytics very often, but I wanted to do it for this event. So just through Invictus that just occurred, these were our overall pull requests across the world, and this is just a selection of them. There was pretty much for every country. But we had 3.2 million total requests just through that month of, where Invictus was active, which is pretty much average for us. If it's a non-event month, then it's more like 2 million. But again, just how many people have been using the application has been pretty amazing, and we're proud of it. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, y'all can clap for that. That's great stuff. Some of these community questions. What was your favorite ship to work on?
Well, my favorite ship to work on was the Kraken, although there.
Well, that leads into my second question.
Okay.
And I noticed this as well, and it was funny that several people in the community noticed it. You used the Kraken as an example for flight-ready ships.
Yeah.
Do you know something the rest of us don't?
So the Kraken is a unique ship. Not really, but I'll tell you this. The Kraken is a unique ship in that it's, and John Crew and Ben Curtis have talked about this before, so is Paul Jones. I had Paul Jones on one of my streams one time talking a little bit about this. The Kraken was, there was a full mesh created for the trailer for its reveal. And I know you all know the Kraken trailer. That mesh, it's not like a final art type mesh for the game, but what it is it is a concept mesh that's been like optimized for the Star engine, so it does operate in engine. And so unlike every other concept ship, the Kraken's like cinematic mesh does exist in the game files, and that's what we were able to pull out, and reassemble with StarFab. Now that did take a little bit of tooling around with it because it's, like I said, it's a unique ship. But yeah, the mesh looks really good. I'm excited to see what CIG does when they do this new pass on it.
One of the questions is, do you need any more help? Someone says they're a 3D modeler in SketchUp and Blender, and they're wondering if you need any more help.
Yeah, any Blender artists or Cinema 4D artists, which there probably aren't any, but any any Blender artists I'm always interested in connecting with, whether it's for Fleet Viewer or actual release ships or like supporter ships, like Easter egg ships we do, but then also possible work on Fleet Command, because Fleet Command, this will carry over into Fleet Viewer as well, but the idea with Fleet Command is we're going to do a few more angles of the ships in Fleet Viewer. We've had a lot of requests for right side isometric and, front and rear direct on view. So that's probably something we're going to add.
So if you ask that question, and you see Grim later, be sure to let him know.
Reach out to him.
Or even if you didn't and you're interested. How would you like CIG to balance openness to creators who do this type of thing without compromising the security? How do you build a relationship with CIG to do these types of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, we're lucky in that CIG puts out the concept models on the website, because if those weren't there, I doubt we would have concept ships represented in Fleet Viewer, because to model all that from zero, from like scratch, would take a lot of work. I have had some chats with Ben Curtis. I know Ben does a lot of the holo model conversions of ships, and I know when the Ironclad was originally revealed, its holo model didn't hit the website for a few days, and I asked him, I said, is that coming? Because I was in love with that ship, and he was like, oh yeah, let me get on, I'm on it. So they've been really helpful. And then when Fleet Viewer launched, I think it was Xylo reached out to me when it was sort of starting to catch on, and CIG was awesome and very supportive, and offered up some ships for us to do as a Fleet Viewer launch giveaway sort of thing. So CIG's always been incredibly supportive. Our main thing, though, and if you've ever watched any of my streams, when I give away posters, we don't sell anything related to Fleet Viewer. We don't monetize it in any way. There's no premium sign-ins or nothing like that. It's always free, always will be free. We respect CIG and their IP ownership, and I think as long as a creator can kind of keep things honest like that and play within the rules, then CIG is pretty helpful. So.
We are going to talk a little bit about that, though, because there's been several questions about how to support you doing this work. How do people support you doing this work? It's people saying it's not clear how it's monetized. It's not monetized. That's why it's not clear, right? So, as you just said.
Well,
but someone said you all should never have to buy a drink, and I agree with that, right? So.
Well,
if people want to support you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, we have we have a Starjump Patreon that's out there. Primarily, that was used back when I was doing cinematics. I don't know if anyone's seen my Starjump cinematics I did a few years back, but the rendering for that is what that paid for, is what the Patreon was paying for, because it was, I had to pay money to render those scenes. It was like cloud-based rendering.
Is that the stuff that plays behind you when you're streaming?
All that stuff.
Everybody wants to know how to do that.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'm sure you do.
Well, so I have had a lot of requests for that from people within the Starjump community and the wider Star System community. So none of my channels, though, are really monetized, so all the stuff goes out for free. So a lot of those animated backdrop scenes and stuff, I'm going to put that out for everyone. But yeah, we have the Patreon. You can support us through there. We use that, primarily we use Patreon money to print posters and stuff for events that people can have, to do giveaways on the channels for posters and stuff like that. So that's primarily what it's used for. In general, though, we don't really monetize. I mean, if you want to support, honestly, I would say the big thing is watch our videos on YouTube. I have a lot of videos on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Follow us, and that's enough.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
Yes, ring that alert bell.
Very good. And finally, the toughest ship to construct. And I want to say that when there's so many people that ask questions in Slido that either began with or ended with "thank you for enabling me to show my fleet." So I just want you to know how appreciated you are by the community. But toughest ship.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Toughest ship to make for Fleet Viewer?
Toughest ship to construct.
That's easy. It's definitely the Crucible. It was in the biggest. The Hollow model was like the biggest mess in terms of it just being really low fidelity, lots of problems with it. A lot of it had to be rebuilt from scratch, and then we wanted to be able to show the Crucible in multiple ways, where the scarab is open, but the scarab is removed, and then there's a lot of argument about which direction the ship flies. So we did a lot of work to do multiple variants of the Crucible, and it's one of those ships that we did all the work to make it look good, and I know it's going to be reconcepted and look completely different. So, but I don't consider it wasted work. It's what it looks like right now. So, yeah, that was probably the hardest, and then definitely the runner-up to that would be the Endeavor.
Yeah, I bet.
Just because of all the modules, and there's only a few images of the model of the actual modules. So to model those and everything and get them looking somewhat correct was kind of a challenge.
Powerful. Starjump Grim, everybody. Give him a big hand. Thank you
Thank
very
you, everyone.
much.
Appreciate it.